My name is Autumn Taylor, and I'm 33 years old. I'm just an ordinary marketing specialist at Brightwave Media, a place where your value seems to be measured only by the watch on your wrist, the designer labels you wear, and how well you flatter the right people in meetings that reek of power. That morning, right in the middle of an all-company meeting, just as I finished presenting a $1 million strategy that I had closed on my own, the CEO stood up, gave me a thin smile, and announced, "Autumn, your presence would embarrass us in front of our VIP clients. You are not coming with us to the retreat at our partner's private resort." The room filled with muffled laughter. No one defended me. Not a single sympathetic glance. I just sat there, silent, my hands trembling slightly beneath the table. None of them knew that resort, the very place they were eagerly packing their bags to visit, was in fact my inheritance. It was the last gift my mother left me, before she passed away. A place that bore her name, held my childhood memories, where I once helped staff clean rooms and plant trees around the pool. Have you ever been humiliated in the very place where you gave everything? Have you ever been pushed aside by people who had no idea who you truly were? If my story stirs something in you, leave a comment below. Hit like and subscribe so you can walk with me through this journey, because right after this I'll tell you how I quietly walked into that resort not as an excluded employee, but as its rightful owner. I was born in Carmel, a small but picture-perfect coastal town, where cliffs drop straight into the Pacific Ocean, and the air always carries both the salt of the sea and the fragrance of lavender from hillside gardens. Our home sat on a slope overlooking the ocean, where afternoons were spent on the balcony with my mother, legs swinging to the rhythm of the waves, a glass of her homemade strawberry juice in my hand, watching the last rays of sunlight streak across the silver water. My mother, Evelyn Monroe, was a woman no one could look away from. She didn't need lavish gowns to silence a room. Her presence alone was enough. A renowned architect of eco-resorts along California, she created Haven Bay Resort as a symbol of calm, harmony, and quiet elegance. Not the kind of luxury enforced with gleaming metal or gaudy chandeliers, but beauty drawn from local oak, ancient limestone, natural light, and the way every chair and every wall seemed to breathe with the landscape. She didn't just design Haven Bay, she planted flowers in its gardens, hand-painted the artwork for each room, and named the villas after the places she and I traveled through on summer journeys across Italy, Spain, and Japan. My childhood was filled with the laughter of housekeepers, the smell of fresh mango pastries every morning from Chef Pascal, and the way my mother would run her fingers along the wood panels in the hallways as though listening to what the building whispered to her. Each summer, I pitched in with small tasks. Folding towels, writing new menus on chalkboards, greeting guests at the front desk. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to belong to that place. Then one day, Haven Bay became only a memory. My mother died of pancreatic cancer, just 6 months after the diagnosis. I was 18 when I stood frozen in the hospital doorway, clutching her hand as her lips moved soundlessly. Her final words weren't about pain, but about the resort. Don't let it fall into the hands of someone who doesn't understand it. After the funeral, my father Henry Taylor remarried in less than 8 months. His new wife, Linda, had a dazzling smile and nails always painted a crimson red. I didn't hate her, but her presence in the house that had been my mother's made it hard to breathe. My mother's paintings were boxed away. The jasmine scent she loved was replaced by cinnamon candles in every corner. The kitchen, once warm with fresh bread and classical music, was cold and sterile, broken only by the tapping of her manicured nails on a phone screen. One afternoon, I came downstairs to see my father and his lawyer at the dining table. A will lay between them. According to my mother's wishes, Haven Bay Resort was placed in a trust. I was the legal beneficiary. But management control was given to my father until I either turned 30 or proved independent leadership capability, as judged by a board he himself would appoint. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply went upstairs, packed a few clothes, and left that night. I moved to San Diego, rented a small apartment near campus, and lived off the savings my mother had left just for me. No one at home called. No one came looking. I checked into my dorm that fall like a ghost. Not too sad. Not too angry. Just cold and hollow. As if the ocean winds from Carmel had blown the last warmth out of me. I chose marketing not out of some grand passion, but because I had seen how my mother turned an empty stretch of land into a dream destination simply by telling a story. Each room she designed carried a theme, a color, a scent tied to a journey, an experience. I wanted to learn how to tell that kind of story in the language of advertising, branding, and markets. But I made myself a promise: I would not use the Monroe name. I would not lean on inheritance or connections to earn my place. I started at small agencies, then landed at Brightwave Media after graduating with honors. They knew nothing about my past. I drove an old Honda, lived in a worn-down rental, wore a navy blazer and flats. I skipped cocktail parties, didn't play golf with executives, didn't sip martinis with the PR team. I just worked, filed reports on time, and landed deals that my male colleagues had failed to secure. But it was never enough. Gregory, the CEO, always gave me that thin smile when reading my reports. "Good work," he'd say, before turning to Ethan or Kyle. "You boys take it from here." And when it was time to present to the board, it was never me up there. It was them. I stayed in the corner, tweaking slides, answering emails, nodding as if my absence on stage was the most natural thing in the world. I endured it for 3 years. Not out of weakness, but because I wanted to prove I could stand on my own without leaning on legacy. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed true to my principles, someone would finally see me. I was wrong. That morning, when Gregory stood in front of the company and declared that I wasn't polished enough to sit with VIP clients at a resort, the very place where my mother had planted lavender, laid the stones, built it with her bare hands, I realized something. If I didn't claim what was mine, others would trample it under their heels and walk on as if I had never existed. I said nothing when the meeting ended. I packed my laptop, retrieved the presentation they had pushed aside, walked past the half-pitying, half-smug glances, and returned to my desk as if nothing had changed. But inside, a door opened, one I had locked for 15 years. Haven Bay was never meant to be my escape. But maybe it was time to return. Not to beg, but to remind them who truly wrote that story. I sat at my desk, a small corner overlooking a dusty parking lot, while Ethan and Kyle laughed in a closed meeting with Gregory, their voices spilling through the glass walls. The meeting wasn't on the internal calendar. No one had informed me, even though I had drafted the entire campaign from scratch. That Friday afternoon, sunlight poured over my desk, highlighting the dust on the worn wood. I quietly typed out my report, double-checking the detailed budget line I knew would be altered before the final submission altered to erase my name. It wasn't rare anymore. 3 months earlier, when I closed a deal with a medical equipment manufacturer in Colorado, a contract no one thought possible. I submitted a full proposal, brand strategy, customer positioning, distribution plan. 3 weeks later, my presentation appeared in a board meeting, but the name presenting it was Ethan's. "He has a gift for presenting," Gregory said when I asked. "We work for the collective good, not personal recognition." A week later, Ethan got a raise. Kyle didn't even have to try. He showed up late, left early, dressed as if he were heading to a ball field instead of an office. Yet he was always handed the big tech accounts, the high-profile clients. I was only mentioned for when they needed someone to handle the side tasks. Kyle was the one standing next to Gregory, glass of wine in hand, laughing easily. They talked about golf, yachts, and real estate investments, things I was never invited to join. "You're better suited for softer brands," Gregory once said as he pulled me off a major tech campaign and reassigned me to a natural cosmetics line. Female clients will appreciate your gentle touch. I nodded, like I always did. But that evening, sitting alone in a cafe, I stared at the abandoned campaign plan, feeling my chest tighten as if someone had drawn a harsh line through all the invisible hours of work no one ever saw. I used to think that if I worked harder, pushed further, things would change. But I was starting to understand that at Brightwave, it wasn't the best who got the opportunities. It was whoever got a seat at the right table. Then came Clara Johnson, the new Vice President of Strategic Development. One of the few women promoted in the last 3 years. Clara made a striking entrance the moment she walked into the office. A crisp white blazer with no crease, elegant beige heels, dark brown curls cut neatly, and a sharp smile. In our very first meeting, she approached me. "I read your report on the middle-aged consumer market." "Very sharp," Clara said, holding her coffee, eyes meeting mine. "We should talk more." I almost couldn't believe my ears. For the first time in years, a female executive wasn't dismissing me. We started having lunch together a few times a month. Clara listened as I spoke about the unfair project allocations, how Gregory rotated people to steal credit, the favoritism so blatant it burned in my throat. Clara nodded, laid her hand over mine, and said, "I've been there too. We have to look out for each other." I believed her. Things shifted in the spring, when Brightwave began negotiations with an international tech company. I was assigned as lead strategist. Gregory didn't object. Ethan wasn't at the first meeting. I thought, maybe just maybe my work was finally being recognized. But only a week later, Clara walked into my office with Gregory. They told me to transfer the strategy plan to Kyle, for the sake of international coordination. "This is a directive from higher up," Clara said, avoiding my eyes. I didn't react right away. I only asked, "You told me we had to support each other. Is this what support looks like?" Clara lifted her chin, her smile still perfect, but her eyes had changed. "I have to protect my position, Autumn. No one else will do it for me." Gregory added, "You'll still play an important role. Focus on the lifestyle accounts. I want you on the new Korean skincare brand we just signed. Woman to woman? It'll be easier." I nodded. Like always. But when they left, I shut the door, locked it, and sat down. I opened my laptop. I pulled up every old email, every presentation where my name had been stripped from the metadata. Every draft campaign with edits tagged to Ethan or Kyle. I opened a blank Excel file and began typing. Dates, projects, who took credit, who erased my name, who adjusted the budgets, who signed the final notes. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I only felt cold. Not even the person who once promised she would stand with me. At Brightwave, the only thing protected was the chair, not the person in it. Compliments were nothing more than sugar-coating decisions already carved in stone. And I realized something else. I didn't need them to see me anymore. I only needed them to understand exactly who they had underestimated. Monday morning, the Brightwave office lit up earlier than usual. Hot coffee cups in hand, employees dressed sharper than on a typical day, the air buzzing with an exaggerated excitement. I walked in, hung up my coat, barely had time to power on my computer before Julia, the project coordination assistant, peeked over the divider and whispered, "There's a big announcement today. Did you hear? This quarter's retreat is going to be somewhere special. Really expensive." I nodded politely, forcing a smile. Inside, something unnameable was pressing against my chest. I didn't want to admit what my instincts already knew. But intuition never plays gently. At 10 a.m., the entire staff was called into the large conference room. The LED screen lit up with the company logo. The opening slide showing beaches with white sand, luxury oceanfront villas, wine glasses, golden candles, and sunsets stretching over the water. Gregory stood in the center, his gray shirt pressed to perfection, his face glowing like a man ready to accept an award. "Welcome to what promises to be a remarkable second quarter for Brightwave," he said, his enthusiasm so forced it made my ears ache. "And to celebrate the tireless efforts of our team, the company has decided to hold a 4-day retreat at a truly special location. A seaside paradise I promise you will never forget." The room erupted with cheers as the name appeared. Haven Bay Resort. My throat went dry, the pen in my hand frozen mid-air. Images of the resort filled the screen, rows of palm trees by the lagoon, arched roofs tucked among pines, rooms with glass walls facing the ocean, the cliffside restaurant glowing in candlelight. Every detail pierced me. All of it, once drawn by my mother's hand in her little studio behind our house, now displayed like a trophy for someone else's show. Gregory laughed, his voice booming. "This is one of the most exclusive, luxurious resorts in America. The location was chosen carefully to connect us with strategic partners in the industry and expand our brand's reach. And of course, only those whose presence directly shapes the company's image will attend." The next slide revealed the guest list. Names appeared one after another, with titles and departments. I skimmed quickly, then went back, slowly reading each line. My name wasn't there. No, Autumn Taylor. Not a trace. Even Julia, the assistant who whispered to me that morning, had her name listed administrative coordinator alongside Ethan, Kyle, and even 2 interns who had only been there 6 weeks. I sat still, hand on the desk, eyes on the screen. Inside, my veins burned with the soundless scream of blood rushing too fast. Gregory paused the slide, turned to the room. "This isn't just about relaxation," he emphasized. "It's about leaving an impression on major partners. Which is why the attendee list reflects careful evaluation of professional image, social skills, and the ability to thrive in an elite setting." Then he turned, his gaze locking on me. As if everything about this spectacle had been scripted with me in mind. "And to address any questions that might arise." He squinted, that smirk curling at his lips, half scorn and half condescension. "Not everyone is suited for a place as refined as Haven Bay. We need people who not only have skill but know how to mingle, how to carry themselves, how to hold a glass of wine without spilling it on their clothes." The room. I heard a muffled chuckle from Clara's direction, though she bent over her phone as if to hide it. Gregory looked back at me, this time with no pretense at all. "Autumn, your presence would disgrace us in front of our VIPs. We need people who dress well and talk smoothly. Not you." I didn't flinch. Not a blink. In my ears there was only a hollow silence, a stillness so complete, I thought I might be dreaming. After the meeting, I went back to my desk and turned on my computer as usual. No one stopped to say anything to me. Not a glance of solidarity. Only eyes that looked away, and hurried footsteps as if they were afraid that if they lingered too long, my silence would spread and burn away the fragile positions they were clinging to. I reopened the $7 million tech contract I had just signed the week before, a deal no one believed could be closed. It had taken me nearly 3 months to persuade the development team, push through 4 rounds of accent SAF, budget negotiations, and build an integrated strategy. Every piece of documentation had been written by me. The pricing sheets, the ROI analysis, the brand prototypes, every line in it was my work. And now, I was cut from the trip. While Ethan, who couldn't even draft an email without typos, was invited as a strategic development representative. Clara walked past my desk at 3 p.m. A file in her hands, pretending to be in a rush, but I caught the wary look in her eyes. She said nothing, not even a single word of explanation. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a name I had kept in my contacts though we hadn't spoken in almost 3 years. Lucas Bennett. the manager of Haven Bay for 20 years, the man who carried me when I fell running by the lagoon at age 4. The man who held me at my mother's funeral and whispered in my ear, "This resort will always be part of you." I typed a message. "Uncle Lucas, could you call me tonight? I need to talk about Haven Bay." I put the phone down, stood up, walked out of the office without asking anyone's permission. On the way home, I didn't think about the humiliation. Not about Gregory, or Clara, or Ethan, or Kyle. I only saw one thing clearly in my mind. They had declared war right on the ground that belonged to me. And they had no idea what they were stepping into. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. The apartment lay in shadows, dimly lit by the street lamp glow spilling through the window, reflected across the wooden floor like a distant beam from somewhere else. I sat still on the chair, holding the old phone I'd kept, though its edges were scratched. The screen showed the name I had never erased. Lucas Bennett. I pressed call, my breath locked tight in my chest. The phone rang exactly 3 times before it was picked up. "Autumn?" Lucas's voice was deep and warm, still carrying the hint of Southern California I had heard all throughout my childhood summers. In that sound, I heard my mother's memory. Mornings of biking around the resort, laughter, and the scent of sun-warmed cedar in the main lobby. "It's me, Uncle Lucas," I answered, my throat suddenly tightening. The other end went silent for a few seconds. Then I heard a glass door shut, footsteps on stone, and his whisper. "You made me think you'd never call again." I gave a faint smile, one that never fully formed. "I need a promise from you. No questions, just do what I ask." "Go ahead." I looked at my reflection in the window glass. "I need the presidential villa. 4 nights. Starting Friday morning." On the other end, I heard the sea breeze hiss softly. "Are you sure? That booking is currently held by a corporate group. Let me think, Brightwave, wasn't it?" I pressed my lips together. "That's them." Lucas paused. "They don't know who you are. And they won't, not until the right moment. I want them to believe I'm just a regular guest until the very last minute." He chuckled quietly, a sound carrying both resignation and pride. "You really have grown up. The booking name is Autumn Monroe." He didn't ask why I used my mother's name. He only answered with a single simple sentence. "The presidential villa will be waiting for you. And don't worry, I'll greet you myself." I hung up, my chest still restless with waves. Then I rose, switched on the desk lamp, and opened my laptop. The private folder appeared on the hard drive, locked with 3 layers of passwords. I created a new file, naming it Pattern of Undermining. Under the soft yellow light, I began pulling out every email, every note, every seemingly small exchange that contained proof. Some files were presentations with clear metadata showing I was the creator. Yet when they were sent out, the sender's name was Gregory's. I replayed the recording from 8 months ago, when I presented the strategy for the Sparkle Clear Water campaign, and Gregory had nodded the entire time, only to hand it all to Kyle the next day to present to the board. In the recording, my voice was clear, followed by his smooth but empty tone. "This idea needs a man's voice to deliver strength." I remembered the rushed meetings where I was given assignments right at deadline, then asked why the slides weren't polished enough. I remembered standing next to Clara, once an ally, now avoiding my eyes as if she couldn't bear to face the fairness she had abandoned. I gathered every message marked with discrimination, unfair project transfers, networking events I wasn't invited to, even though I was the lead on campaigns that had been praised. By 2 a.m., I had saved everything onto 3 drives. One I kept, one I mailed to my mother's lawyer, the same man who had helped her establish the Haven Bay Trust, and one encrypted file I sent to my personal email with an authentication lock every 72 hours. Nothing was left to chance. I had learned to live in a world where people assumed women like me couldn't remember details, Every number, every time we were dismissed, every nod and every rejection. But I didn't just remember, I documented. Systematically, with dates, with proof. The next morning, I sent a simple email to HR. I will be taking 4 days off, starting this Friday. All current tasks have been temporarily reassigned. All relevant information is stored in the internal system. Julia replied within 10 minutes. She typed quickly, "Hope you enjoy your time off, Autumn. Not every place is meant for everyone after all." I didn't respond. I only looked at those words the way one looks at dust on glass, visible but harmless. That afternoon, I stopped by a small boutique tucked away in an alley off Mission Street. Not the kind with blinding lights, but the kind where the owner remembered regulars by name, knew their taste, and could predict what would fit without asking. I need a dress that's simple, elegant, but not flashy. Something that anyone can see is expensive, but no one dares ask the price. The clerk only nodded, pulling out an off-white linen dress with a V neckline, soft drape, and a pale gold seam along the side. I tried it on, it fit so perfectly, it felt like I was wearing my own stance. I added a pair of leather sandals, thin straps, modest heels, no loud branding. I chose an old pearl necklace, the one my mother had given me when I turned 16 and left. Everything I needed for the trip was already set in my mind. No one had to arrange it for me. No notice was required. I wasn't going back to Haven Bay as an heiress, nor as an employee cast aside. I would arrive as a guest. And then, as my mother once said, let the place tell the rest of the story. Friday morning, the sky was clear as if washed. After a night of rain, I left the apartment at 6 a.m. My cream-colored suitcase, rolling softly along the wooden hall. No one noticed me. Just like any other day. But inside, every beat of my heart carried a steadiness unlike before. A black Lincoln waited outside, the driver in a gray suit opening the door without a word. I stepped in, shutting out half the world behind me. As the car merged onto the freeway toward the private airport, my hand brushed the suitcase fabric, feeling the firm folds of the linen dress inside, every piece chosen carefully like pieces in a game already calculated. I didn't bring much. A white silk dress with a gentle sheen, cut to a fitted waist. Chestnut leather sandals. And the old pearl necklace my mother had worn on Haven Bay's opening day. The largest pearl sat at the center, slightly off in color, imperfect, but it was the one she had hand-picked on a trip to Japan. I still remembered her clasping it around my neck in front of the mirror, whispering. Airport, the Citation X was waiting. Lucas had arranged everything the night before. As I stepped onto the jet stairs, the flight attendant smiled. "Welcome, Miss Autumn, it's so nice to see you again." "Hello, Diane." I answered softly, surprised she was still here. "You still remember my name?" "I even remember your daughter studying architecture at UCLA. She's in her senior year now, isn't she?" Her eyes lit up. "Yes, she's working on her final project, and she still talks about the advice you gave her during that conversation years ago." I smiled faintly. A part of me felt comforted that through all the changes, some things had stayed the same. 2.5-hour flight passed smoothly. Like the sea on a windless day. I didn't open my laptop, didn't check my email. I just sat by the window, fingers brushing the pendant at my neck, eyes on the drifting clouds below. It felt like I was flying across an invisible line, leaving behind the silence I had once chosen, returning to where I belonged but not in the role I once had. When the plane touched down on Haven Bay Resort's private runway, the sky was a clear, flawless blue. The palms swayed in the light breeze, fronds waving as if in greeting. Lucas was already waiting outside. White shirt, gray khakis, sunglasses hanging from his collar. He said nothing, just pulled me into a tight hug, as if his arms could shield me from all the years I had lived in that harsh world. "You've grown so much," he said, stepping back to look me over. "No longer the little girl building sand piles behind the kitchen. Your hair's much grayer now." from worrying, while Haven Bay waited for someone to come home. I smiled, my gaze softening. The golf cart carried us down the stone path, lined with scattered pines and pale lavender shrubs. Along the way, staff members stood to greet us, nodding formally as if welcoming a head of state. They all remembered me. Their eyes glimmered something indescribable, both familiar and surprised, respectful and fond. "You arranged the villa the way I asked?" I said. "Every detail is set. The presidential villa has been prepared exactly as on your list. The hand-stitched balcony cloth, loose jasmine tea instead of bags, the cedar wood scent, and even the ice tray carved with the letter M. Just as your mother liked." I nodded, my chest tightening slightly. "And the Bright Wave group? When will they arrive?" 3 p.m. Their charter flight from San Jose. I received the guest list they sent. 12 people, including Gregory White, Clara Johnson, Ethan Brooks, Kyle Henley. I closed my eyes for a moment as the names rolled off his tongue. Not from fear. Only to keep my heartbeat steady in the calm I had built these past days. "When they arrive, treat them like any other guests," I instructed. "Don't let anyone know who I am, no special greetings. Don't say my name in front of, for them. I want to see, with my own eyes, how they treat those they think have no standing." Lucas raised a brow. "Are you certain? If they're disrespectful?" "I'm counting on them being disrespectful. Only then will everything be exposed." Lucas nodded, slowly but firmly. "Then let them play their part. Miss Monroe will be an anonymous guest." We arrived at the presidential villa at 8 a.m. It stood apart at the end of the path leading to the sea, 3 sides facing the ocean, glass walls overlooking the white cliffs below. Nothing had changed since I left, except the frangipani tree by the porch had grown tall enough to brush the roof. I stepped inside, slipped off my shoes, letting my bare feet touch the polished wood floor. The gentle blend of cedar, jasmine tea, and sea salt filled the air, making me feel as if my mother were still there, papers in her hand, eyes fixed on the design pinned to the wall. I unpacked, hanging the dress carefully in the wooden wardrobe. Placed the sandals neatly below. I held the pearl necklace in my hand as I walked out to the balcony, the wind tugging at the hair I had pinned up. From there, I looked out at the horizon where sky and sea merged without boundary, and beyond that, was the group coming. None of them knew that every stone, every line of this place carried the lifeblood of a woman they had dismissed. None of them knew that inside this villa, at the heart of Haven Bay, a storm was silently forming. And I was its eye. At exactly 3 p.m., I stood on the second-floor balcony of the villa, looking down at the grand lobby where the golf carts pulled the Bright Wave group in. From a distance I saw Gregory step out of a luxury SUV like a self-proclaimed king, wearing a brand-new Hawaiian shirt still creased from its packaging, gold-rimmed sunglasses planted on his sunburned face. Behind him was Clara, in a turquoise dress designed to look younger than her age. Ethan and Kyle laughed loudly, dragging their suitcases while recording videos on their phones for social media. The noise spilled across the lobby, breaking the calm of a resort used only to waves and wind. Gregory lifted his hand as if leading an army. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his voice echoing beneath the high ceiling. "This is Haven Bay Resort, which I had the privilege of visiting in New York last year. I even shared wine with the owner at the Ritz. He valued my insight on the media market." I laughed under my breath. My mother had been gone over 15 years, my father had never once attended a public cocktail party, and I had never set foot in the Ritz in New York. Gregory's lies flowed as naturally as breath, both absurd and unsettling. The great wooden doors opened, and Lucas stepped out from behind the reception desk. He wore a charcoal gray suit, stood tall, his eyes both sharp and kind. When he spoke, the air seemed to quiet. "Welcome, Brightwave team. We are honored to host you, here at Haven Bay, a place where every guest is valued." Gregory strode forward, hand outstretched, a smile wide as if he'd already won a victory. "Gregory White, president of Brightwave. I trust my assistant provided all necessary details. I hope the resort meets the international standards we're accustomed to. Lucas nodded, his voice even and unhurried. Everything has been prepared exactly as requested. But before we discuss the schedule, allow me to do something more important. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the Brightwave group. A few employees chuckled, expecting a special welcome for Gregory. But then Lucas turned, walking toward the staircase leading to the second floor where I was waiting. First, allow me to welcome back Miss Autumn Taylor, owner of Haven Bay Resort. The air seemed to drain from the room. Everyone's head tilted upward. I stepped forward, the afternoon sun glowing on the white silk of my dress, the pearl at my neck catching the time, alight with a soft, steady shine. Every gaze locked on me. Gregory reacted first. His face went pale, lips trembling. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over Ethan's suitcase. What? What is this? Ethan's eyes bulged, Kyle's mouth fell open, gum almost dropping to the floor. Even Clara, always composed, couldn't hide her shock. I descended the staircase, one step at a time, neither rushed nor slow, my calm gaze sweeping over each face. When I reached Gregory, I stopped and gave him a faint smile. "Hello, Mr. White," I said, my voice steady. "What a surprise to see you here." Gregory stammered. "Ow, owner? No, there must be some mistake. You're my employee, just an employee." Lucas stepped forward, his voice firm. "There is no mistake. Haven Bay Resort is the legal property of Miss Autumn Taylor, daughter of architect Evelyn Monroe, the founder of this place. I have served her family for over 20 years, and today, I am honored to welcome her back." The group fell silent. Outside, the crash of waves against the cliffs punctuated every word. I turned to Lucas, nodded slightly, then looked back at Gregory. I had intended to come here as just another guest. But perhaps the truth is ready to be spoken. Gregory swallowed hard, sweat forming on his temple. He tried to reclaim his old tone, but his voice came out strained. I think there must be some misunderstanding. If I had known, if the company had known you were connected to Haven Bay, we would have made different arrangements." I tilted my head, my gaze steady. "So to be acknowledged, I need the Monroe name and ownership of this resort? My talent, my results, the contracts I secured weren't enough?" No one answered. Not even Clara dared to speak. Lucas signaled to the front desk staff. "Please, Brightwave team, follow me. The presidential villa is ready for you." It was reserved under Miss Autumn Taylor's name. A murmur rippled through the group. They followed Lucas, glancing back at me as they walked, as if witnessing something beyond imagination. Gregory staggered at the rear, his face vacant, stripped of its usual arrogance. I walked beside Lucas, leaving behind a group both confused and shaken. In my heart, I could hear my mother's voice carried by the sea breeze. "Don't lower your voice. Don't let anyone decide your worth." The play had only just begun, and they had no idea every role in this retreat had already been written by me. Lucas led the Brightwave group along the white stone path toward the presidential villa. Afternoon sunlight spilled golden patterns across the tiles, the sea breeze drifting through swaying palms. I walked beside him with the calm ease of a host leading guests to their lodging. Behind us, the employees shuffled, the rattle of rolling suitcases mingling with a mix of tension and bewilderment. At the villa's grand hall, Lucas handed me a tablet with the prepared room assignments. I nodded lightly, scanning the names. My voice rang clear, not loud, but enough for everyone to hear. "Julia and Sophie will stay in the ocean suite, directly facing the sea. You both deserve some rest after your hard work these past months." The two young women looked at each other in surprise, then back at me, eyes filled with both gratitude and hesitation. I smiled, nodding gently, reminding them I remembered not only their work but their kindness in every greeting, every shared glance when I was cast aside at the office. I've placed Ethan and Kyle in the Coral Suite. It has a private pool. Hopefully, you'll use it to brainstorm new ideas instead of just talking about golf. A ripple of laughter passed through the group. No one dared object. Ethan flushed red, while Kyle scratched his head, avoiding my eyes. Clara was assigned to the Lotus Suite, farther from the main rooms. I looked directly at her as I announced it. She kept her polished smile, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of irritation. Finally, I stopped at the name everyone was waiting for. Mr. White will be in the garden room. I spoke slowly, emphasizing each word. That room is near the service area, convenient for work if needed. No ocean view, but it opens directly onto the inner garden, very quiet. The silence was heavy. The garden room had been designed for staff accompanying VIPs, not for the VIPs themselves. Gregory swallowed, forcing a smile as his hand shook around his suitcase handle. I think there must be a mistake. His voice rasped. I'm the one in charge of this group. I should be in one of the main suites. Of course you're in charge, I answered evenly. And responsibility often pairs with simplicity. I believe the garden room will suit you. No one dared interject. Gregory gripped his suitcase tighter but was forced to nod. That evening, the welcome dinner was held on the villa's rooftop terrace, overlooking the open sea. The long table was draped in white linen, candles flickering against crystal glasses, each dish arranged with a blend of local flavors and European refinement. The servers moved silently, almost invisible yet flawless. I sat at the center, Lucas to my right, Julia to my left. Gregory sat at a distance, needing to lean to see me clearly. Each time our eyes met, he quickly looked away. When the sommelier poured wine, he bowed and asked what pairing I preferred for the grilled swordfish. I lifted my gaze, smiling. Bring me the Cabernet Sauvignon, 1996. The one Mr. DeLuca once kept specifically for Haven Bay. I recall it carries a trace of wood smoke and ripe berries, perfect for this dish. The server froze briefly, then smiled. Exactly right, ma'am. Very few guests remember that note. I turned to the table, speaking casually, as if sharing a memory. This wine was chosen on Haven Bay's opening day. My mother insisted the sommelier open a bottle, saying if guests enjoyed it, they would never forget this place. Several eyes fixed on me, surprised and curious. Julia whispered, "You know so much." I went on, describing the meaning behind the paintings along the dining room walls, each one originally sketched by my mother before artists finished them. I spoke of the vaulted ceiling, inspired by old Italian monasteries, and the stone flooring of the terrace, quarried from Carmel, less than 20 miles from where I grew up. Everyone listened. No one interrupted. Even Clara, usually quick to insert herself, sat quietly, her eyes locked on me. Gregory forced a smile at first, sipping his wine. But as the night went on, his face paled. The very subjects he once mocked me for, wine, art, architecture, now commanded respect. The things he had dismissed as not classy enough for high-end clients were now being absorbed in silence by the entire table. Ethan leaned toward Kyle, whispering, "We've worked with her for 3 years, and never had a clue." I heard it, but pretended not to. In the candlelight, I looked around and saw shifting expressions. Respect, shame, curiosity. Some of the younger staff lowered their heads, avoiding my eyes, as if regret weighed on them for the times they turned away when I was humiliated in the office. Lucas leaned closer, whispering, "They're beginning to understand." I took another sip of wine, the tannins spreading across my tongue. In my heart, I thought of my mother, of her words before she passed. I knew tonight was only the beginning of the change I had planned. At the end of the table, Gregory stared into his empty glass, shoulders sagging as if the chair beneath him might vanish. And I, for the first time in years, felt I was sitting exactly where I belonged. As the dinner wound down, guests still sipping wine or feigning interest in dessert, the wooden doors at the far end of the hall swung open. The sound of leather shoes echoed on the polished stone floor. I looked up, my breath catching. Henry Taylor, my father, entered. Tall and lean, his silver hair neatly combed, his navy suit tailored to the frame of a man still carrying the stature of high-stakes negotiations. The room froze. A few servers bowed deeply, their hands trembling with shock. Gregory leapt to his feet, face tightened but forced into a smile, his voice shaky. "Mr. Taylor, what an honor, truly an honor. We had no idea you would be here tonight." My father did not look at him. His gaze fixed on me, heavy with both pride and caution. He walked slowly to the long table, placed a hand on my shoulder, then turned to the group. "You must be wondering why I'm here." His voice deep, measured. "I didn't come to meet Brightwave. I came to watch my daughter take her place at Haven Bay." A ripple of shock spread through the room. I saw Ethan nearly drop his spoon, while Julia stared at me, mouth open in disbelief. Clara tried to hide her unease by sitting straighter, but her hand clenched her glass of water to stop it from shaking. Gregory swallowed hard, forcing a weak smile. "Did you say, daughter? You mean, Autumn?" My father nodded, his eyes never leaving me. "Evelyn, Autumn's mother, was the founder of Haven Bay. Before she passed, she left this place to her. I've only been a caretaker, waiting until Autumn was ready. Not just this resort, but the entire chain of properties, the design firm, and the investment funds tied to it. All belonged to her." The entire room went silent, until the screech of a chair cut through when Kyle shot to his feet. "Wait, are you saying Autumn doesn't just own Haven Bay but the whole Taylor Monroe enterprise?" My father answered calmly. "That's right, and I believe she will do better than anyone who has ever sat in that seat." Every gaze turned to me. I saw faces that had once turned away when Gregory humiliated me at the office, now frozen in shock. Some showed disbelief, some regret, and some a flicker of calculation. Gregory's voice shook as he tried to cut in. "Mr. Taylor, I truly didn't know. If I had known, I would have treated her differently. I only wanted what's best for the company. And Autumn..." I set my glass down, cutting him off. "You don't need to pretend. For 3 years, you made it very clear what you thought of me." The air was so tight it could have been sliced with a knife. My father squeezed my shoulder lightly, a silent confirmation. He turned to Gregory, his voice cold. "I heard you once, said my daughter's presence would lower Brightwave's standards?" Gregory's face drained of color, words stumbling. "That was just a misunderstanding. I didn't mean it that way." "Really?" My father's gaze was sharp enough to make Gregory step back. "Without Autumn, Brightwave wouldn't have the contracts you now brag about." "Exactly which projects she brought in. Every number in those reports." Clara quickly jumped in, trying to regain her professional tone. "Mr. Taylor, I think everyone here respects Autumn deeply. It's just that we never fully understood her." I looked straight at Clara, my voice steady. "You did understand, Clara, but you chose to turn away." Clara fell silent, her lips trembling. My father continued, his words slow but heavy. "Haven Bay has never been a stage for someone's boasting or false image. It was built with the hands and heart of Evelyn, and now Autumn is the only one with the right to decide." He raised his head, his gaze sweeping the table as if reading each person's thoughts. "From now on, every matter tied to Haven Bay will be under Autumn's direct authority. If you want to collaborate, speak with her, not me. Not anyone else." Gregory collapsed into his chair, his face empty as if everything had slipped away. Julia looked at me with a mix of admiration and regret. Ethan and Kyle were silent, stripped of arrogance. Clara bit her lip, trying to remain composed. but her eyes revealed she knew she had backed the wrong side. I sat still, my hand resting on the pearl necklace at my neck. In my heart, I heard my mother's voice. Haven Bay is yours. And only you know what it deserves to become. My father lifted his hand from my shoulder. But before leaving the table, he added one final declaration. Don't forget, Autumn is not just the employee you dismissed. She is the rightful heir to Evelyn's legacy. And that is not privilege, it is responsibility. With that, he walked out slowly, leaving behind a thick air of shifting stairs. I sat tall, my eyes steady on Gregory. In that moment, all the power in the room shifted. It no longer belonged to him. It rested squarely in my hands. That night, I sat alone in the study of the presidential villa, the polished ebony desk reflecting the warm glow of the lamp. Before me lay a thick black folder, filled with everything I had quietly gathered over the past 3 years. Every page recorded a piece of the truth. Emails altered so my name disappeared, project plans with metadata changed to someone else, mocking notes Gregory had sent to colleagues, and evidence he deliberately excluded me from key meetings. I turned each page, my breathing steady, calm, in a way that even surprised me. Around 9 p.m., a soft knock came at the door. I said quietly, "Come in." Gregory appeared, stripped of his usual arrogance. His shoulders slumped, shirt wrinkled, eyes avoiding mine. "Autumn," he began, his voice hoarse. I need to speak with you privately." I didn't offer a seat immediately. I simply placed my hand on the folder, then looked straight at him. "Sit down." He dragged the chair, the scraping sound harsh against the wooden floor. His eyes flicked to the file, then back to me. "I know. You've prepared something." "Prepared?" I tilted my head. "No. This is just what you've done." I only pieced it together into one complete picture. I pushed the folder toward him. "Open it." Gregory's hands shook as he flipped the pages. The first was an email from the Sparkle Clear project, metadata clearly showing me as the author. He flinched, turned another. Page 3 held handwritten notes from a meeting. "Cut Autumn. Put Ethan in. Easier to sell the idea." His eyes widened, lips moving as if to argue. But no words came. "You thought no one noticed." "But I remembered everything," I said evenly. I was called not classy enough to sit at a client's table. I was cut from the retreat list even after securing the biggest contract of the year. "And this," I pointed at a red mark, "is the recording where you said my idea needed a male voice to sound strong." Gregory gasped, trying to close the folder. "No, you need to read to the end." Reluctantly, he flipped further. The final pages held detailed charts of every project I was pushed aside from, alongside the company's actual revenue. At the bottom, a comparison chart. Every successful contract traced back to plans I had written. Yet, the recognition always went to someone else. Gregory dropped his head, hand covering his forehead. "Autumn, what were you going to say? That you only wanted to protect me?" He looked up, eyes pleading. "Yes. I thought you weren't ready. I only wanted to shield you from corporate politics. I never meant to harm." Sharp and humorless. "Protect me? By erasing my name? Protect me? By letting others take the stage for my work? You call that protection?" His face burned red as he stammered. I was wrong." I rose, circling behind his chair, stopping close. My voice dropped low. "You will not be destroyed. I don't need to do that, but you will change." Gregory turned, panic in his eyes. "Change how?" I placed another folder in front of him. "Tomorrow, at the full group meeting here at Haven Bay, you will publicly announce your resignation." You will sign this agreement. Brightwave will adopt transparent policies in project allocation. Provide advancement based on actual performance, not favoritism. And the company will partner with the Evelyn Monroe Scholarship Fund to support underprivileged marketing students. This is what my mother always wanted. He stared at the agreement, fingers trembling on the edge of the paper. You're asking me to bury my career. I held his gaze. No. I'm giving you the chance to be remembered not as the man who was overthrown, but as the one who laid the foundation for change. Whether you leave in disgrace or with a sliver of dignity, that's up to you. Gregory sat in silence for a long time. I saw the weight in his shoulders, his eyes closing as if weighing his whole life. Finally, he nodded faintly. All right, I'll sign. I pulled the folder back, my voice steady. Not now. Tomorrow. In front of everyone. And remember, if you go back on your word, everything in this file will go straight to the board and the press. I'm already prepared. Gregory looked up, eyes bloodshot. Autumn, you're cruel. I tilted my head slightly. Call it whatever you want. I'm only doing what should have been done long ago. He stood, walking toward the door, his steps heavy as if dragging the weight of the past. Before leaving, he turned back, his voice rough. You'll destroy me. I stared straight at him, unblinking. No. You destroyed yourself the moment you dismissed me. The door closed, leaving the room steeped in silence. I sat down, my hand resting on the pearl necklace at my neck, feeling the chill of each bead against my skin. From the distant sea breeze, I almost heard my mother's whisper. It's time for you to decide your own fate. On the desk, the agreement still lay waiting, ready for tomorrow morning. 6 months later, I sat in the new office on the top floor of the Brightwave building, now called the chairman's office. Morning sunlight streamed through the wide glass windows, glinting across the polished walnut desk. I looked down at the bustling street below, though inside I carried a strange calm. On the desk, beside my computer and the latest quarterly profit report, sat two things I always kept at the center. A small wooden model of Haven Bay Resort, and an old photograph of me with my mother on opening day. She wore a pale blue dress, I wore a simple white one, both of us smiling, with the endless sea stretching behind. That photo reminded me that today's success was not an endpoint, but a responsibility to carry forward. The latest quarterly report had made the board beam with pride. Profits up 27%, compared to the same period last year. The reason wasn't only major contracts, but also a new sense of trust within the team. Transparent policies were in place. Every project public on the system. Evaluations based on results. No more secret meetings reserved for Gregory's Whiskey Club. The company's atmosphere shifted. Young employees dared to share ideas, and those once silent now stood up to defend their views. Gregory vanished from the industry like smoke. Rumor had it he moved to Florida, bought a small house by the shore, far from all business events. I didn't care much. The man once so confident he believed he could lose nothing, had ended his career in quiet retreat. One afternoon, as I reviewed a proposal with the Evelyn Monroe Scholarship Fund to expand mentoring for students, there was a knock at the office door. My secretary entered, speaking softly. Someone wants to see you, Clara Johnson. I paused my pen. That name carried a whole weight of memory. Clara, who once held my hand and promised to stand beside me, then turned away to keep her position. Let her in. Clara stepped in, looking nothing like before. No trendy dress, no sharp smile. Today she wore a plain gray suit, her hair loose, her face carrying weariness. Autumn, she began, her voice quiet, as if confessing a debt. Thank you for giving me the chance to meet. I nodded, gesturing to the chair opposite. Sit. She sat, hands clasped tightly. I've thought a lot since that day at Haven Bay. I realized I chose wrong. I turned my back on you, and on my own principles, just to hold on to a position. And in the end, I lost it anyway. She lifted her eyes, filled with both regret and honesty. I'm not here to excuse myself. I want to ask for a chance to start over. Under the fair system you've built. I know I can contribute, if you allow me. I studied the face that once brimmed with confidence, now humbled. For a moment, I remembered the times Clara avoided my eyes in the hallways, the times she let Gregory erase me from projects. The sting lingered, but I also saw the change in her eyes today. I don't need fake loyalty, I said evenly. I need people who've learned their lesson and are ready to act differently. Clara nodded firmly. I'm willing to start lower, anywhere. I just want to be part of it. I leaned back, my fingers brushing the Haven Bay model. If you really want to return, there will be no shortcuts. Everything is transparent, every evaluation based on results. No privileges for anyone. Can you accept that? Clara drew a deep breath, answering without hesitation. I accept. I smiled, not a victorious smile, but one of relief. Then prove it. The room fell quiet. I saw her eyes brighten with a spark of hope, so different from the fear she carried at first. In her smile I heard a whisper. You didn't just stand firm. You redefined what strength means. I touched the edge of the frame gently, then opened my computer to continue reviewing proposals. Outside, the city still roared, the storms of business never ceasing. But in this room I understood, the cycle had closed. From someone pushed aside, I had become the one redefining power and success. My story ends here, but I believe everyone has their own Haven Bay, a place holding memories, pain, and strength we never realized we had. So, what about you? If you were the one being pushed down, would you stay silent, or find a way to stand up and change the rules? Share your thoughts, I truly want to hear them. And if you want to continue with me through the next stories of family, betrayal, and reclaiming true worth, follow the channel. There are still many stories to tell, many memories waiting to be brought to light. See you in the next one.